We'll call to order here at 5 o'clock with a bare majority showing up, so, but we can go ahead. I think we're not gonna have, we may have Joe, we're not sure. We're not gonna have Jansen, he's traveling internationally, I think, and we heard from David that he's in the air and he's having to divert for weather or something, so instead of being on the phone, he's not gonna be on the phone. He's paying attention. Right. Okay, so with that, we have the roll call just by side. I got you all checked off that are here. We know the other guys aren't going to be here. More than likely, we won't see Joe. Do we have any public comments in queue?
One, Joshua Cooperman.
Okay. Hello, Joshua. Can you hear us?
Yes,
Okay, you have the floor. You have your comment, 3 minutes.
thanks. This is Josh Cooperman. I live in Louisville. As I hope all of you know, last month, the FAA authorized an unleaded aviation fuel that can be used in virtually all piston engine aircraft. Earlier this month, just a few days ago, the EPA issued an endangerment finding regarding lead pollution from piston engine aircraft. In light of these two recent events, I sincerely hope that the airport will phase out the use of leaded gasoline for aircraft, or leaded aviation fuel, sorry. That's all. Thank you very much.
The day will come. We're all on board.
I think it's a priority that everybody in the airport has been,
Absolutely.
and will continue to be.
So it is a good thing. And that is true. What he says is true. It was the STC went out for all manufacturers, all of
Something
them.
in the paper yesterday about it.
Yeah.
No, it has to get distributed though.
Yeah, well, it has to be manufactured and distributed, right.
Yeah.
But we're on our way finally, so that is good news. Okay, we missed some minutes in July for approval. We did send it out. Did everybody have a chance to look them over?
Yeah.
So maybe we can have a motion for the July minutes, and we'll move on to the September.
We approve them.
Second it.
Okay, a second. Everybody in favor of the July minutes as written?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that one passes. Thank you. How about the September minutes?
Move to approve.
John, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, John? John, the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Jumping right into some of our business items. The first one is going to be a couple of deliveries from our fearless director. First up is JSX. Okay.
So I think everyone here knows and very excited about JSX. Started in September,
August.
August,
No, September. No,
August
September
4th.
3rd.
September 3rd.
Wow.
Anyway, about 2 months ago.
Long time ago.
They've been very successful. Good loads, both to Burbank and Dallas. And they announced about 3 weeks ago that they'll be adding Las Vegas and Phoenix on November 3rd. Super excited about that. Couple things for the airport. What that means is from about 8:30 in the morning till 8:30 at night, there'll be a plane either landing or taking off about every 30 minutes.
So the first
So there'll be an hour and a half gap in the afternoon that it's kind of fits. So we've added 6 temporary snow removers that are on call only for snow. Where we usually have had 2, so just so that we can get through the cleaning quick enough to keep that runway. Takes us about 30 minutes to clear the runway, so not a lot of slop. So pretty exciting. Our paid parking will go into effect in November. We're working through the contracts for both towing, because you can't have paid parking unless you have towing, and then the parking. And so the gravel lot will be paid. You can do it via your phone off of an app. And the short term, we've been stickering cars just to kind of get the people to know. There's signs out there that say no parking overnight. And so we had a few initial people parking overnight, but in the last week and a half, we haven't had anybody. So I think the word's getting out. People are realizing that if they're going to spend the night here, they have to park in the long-term lot. So good things.
August 4th for the record.
August 4th, I was right. Took me 4 guesses, but I got it.
I'll interject. My neighbor took JSX to Dallas, and he said it was the best flight he's ever had this life. He said if everything was that way, he'd travel every week. And he said, I'm a chronic complainer. I have nothing to complain about.
Says a lot right there.
What
can you say to that?
For everybody.
You're out of order, Jay.
I think that's, hey, Ben, I
Not
think
according to the guys downstairs.
we have Joe online.
Oh,
Hey,
hey,
how are you guys? Can you hear me okay?
thanks. Thanks for joining.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here. I'm out in Laughlin, Nevada at a fishing tournament, so I apologize I'm a few minutes late.
It's okay.
All right. Did you win?
Is there any water out there?
Not much. They had to move it from Lake Mead to Lake Mojave because Lake Mead is so low.
You just got back from Vegas. It's drier than a.
How big's the fish you caught, Joe? Show us.
Well, I got to tell you fish stories. I can't show you the picture. I just have to tell you. I caught a 5-pounder.
Cool.
Except it was a 5-pound marlin, which is the world's smallest. Oh, there it is. Look at that.
Well, okay.
Excellent.
Very good.
So, at the beginning of September, actually, in August, we had the meeting with the subcommittee of the roundtable to work on VFR ingress and egress routes. Then we got a task force together. Some of the advisory board members were part of that. We discussed it with the air traffic control manager, the flight schools, and then some airport staff. What we did is we identified a potential north and south ingress and egress into the airport to try to alleviate some noise. That focus was on addressing the areas with the highest volumes of complaints, which are Superior is a little bit hard because it's Rock Creek and there's just no way around Rock Creek. But if you get kind of outside of that, then it's Louisville and Lafayette. Obviously, safety and all procedures are subject to air traffic control instructions, weather and traffic avoidance and safety. And then actual traffic pattern entry exit will vary from what we put on the map, which is not for you guys so much, but for the general public. So this is what we came up with as a way to sort of alleviate some of the noise impacts. Outbound, we would go either over or east of 287 at a minimum altitude of 7,500. And then inbound from the north, it would be east of Boulder Reservoirs and west of Louisville to 36, and then inbound at a minimum altitude of 7,000 feet. And it's important to note for the general public who aren't pilots, this is not like telling someone to go down Sims to get onto Wadsworth and to XYZ. It's, aircraft are funneling into that area sort of eastbound. And the idea when we talked to the pilots was to stay west of Louisville, east of Gun Barrel and Boulder. And so you're kind of basically tracking down open space. So we did that. Next slide, Ben. With those flight schools, CFIs going back to their instructors, we did a 30-day beta test to see what it worked. We were looking for a noise input from the noise complaints so we could have a map that says, hey, here's where the complaints are. Problem is our IT department from the county is struggling with that technology. I don't know why, but we don't have it. It would be nice to be able to put a map up there and say, look at all these new red hotspots that we created, but now it's cooled down over here. We just don't have that. It's important to note also that the data lags by 2 months, so we really don't know what's happening in that September beta test. But if you look historically, the 2022 noise complaints, we had 456 and then only 306 in September. So you're like, okay, that's a pretty good reduction. Our beta test is working. The problem is if you go back to 2021 and then 2020 and all the way back, you had 385 in August and 200 in September. And you think, well, what's going on in September? Kids are back in school. The weather's getting worse. Days are getting shorter, on and on and on. And so those numbers don't sort of prove anything. Next slide, man. So we asked Traycon to give us a 3-day map, which is what we compared to for the discussion. And you look at it and you're like, okay, if in August 27th through 29th, there's a whole lot of spaghetti thrown up against the wall. I'm not sure what's there, but let's go look at September 20, during our beta test. It may look like it's a little more condensed there to the east, but hard to tell. So again, it's like, well, did it work or didn't work? We don't really know. Next slide, Ben. Zooming it in to try to even get a little more acuity on it. Ben says he thinks he can see a difference. Again, it's a little thicker.
The inbound one has a track that showed up, it looks like.
Yeah, right from the reservoirs, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So what we called it, next slide, Ben. Or is that the last one? So what we kind of called it is a mixed bag. What we found out, and we're gonna have a debrief, and I think everyone here got an invite, Ben, to the debrief. The air traffic control manager was temporary, was on his way out,
Right.
so he wasn't gonna jump on anybody's sword to say, no, we're doing this. The individual controllers, because it's not being directed, they have a very risk adverse sort of attitude in life. Unless it's a direction or a rule or something or a regulation, they're not really enforcing it. So we heard mixed results from the pilots saying that air traffic controller was knock that stuff off and go back to what we used to be doing. Other ones said, Roger, come on in, didn't seem to bother him. We also got a mixed bag from the flight schools. Some CFIs were kind of forward and really tried to push it, and the other ones kind of walked back and basically said, yeah, we'll try it, and that was kind of the end of it. So I don't think we got a very good beta test. So I think a couple things that come to mind, and then we can discuss it. I believe the complexity of our airspace with, it'd be great if you could go off the end of the runway and there was nothing out there, and then you could turn left or right, but we're trying to avoid it and coming in. So I think with the airspace, the complexity of the traffic patterns, the complexity of our runway system, no one is really willing to go, yeah, I'm gonna risk, oh, by the way, flight students with task overload. I just don't think this is a great thing. So we called knock it off at the end of the beta test. We're gonna do a debrief and maybe try to look at a simpler one, maybe East 287 north and south. Although we heard a lot of people complain about, that's now over Old Town Louisville, or maybe Lafayette, I can't remember. But we'll look at it again and then we'll go back to the round table and brief. So with that, I'll answer any questions, or anybody can answer or ask any questions, and I'll do the best I can, or Ben will do the best he can.
Do the flight schools feel like it's also a potential safety advantage, having a quarter, one out, one in?
I think it was split. There was one guy who was kind of
At least
less
before we started, I don't know
enthusiastic,
now.
right? There was one guy who thought it was kind of a good idea. There was another set, and each person represented there's their senior flight instructor. The team that sat here was kind of like, well, we just set, 6,000 feet from 10 miles out, and, that way that's not an extra step once we hit the class B, or sorry, class D. So can't imagine they went back and were like, yeah, let's go do this change. I just think it was kind of like, well, we'll try it. I think maybe it really didn't get pushed out very much. I think with the midair, that may re-energize that discussion, but we won't know that until the debrief.
The part that I thought was probably entirely predictable was particularly when some residents in the gun barrel area found out that there had been some suggestion of a change. There were some, not very many, but very vociferous complaints about, why did you decide to route all this traffic over my house now, and I think that's totally predictable and, just needs to be realized in any of these discussions as you do this, that what might be an improvement to one person is bad for another person, and you're really kind of moving it around. And so I think as these discussions go on, there are kind of problems without definitive solutions, and the potential for lots of squabbling and squawking by people just based on the perceptions alone, without ever actually hearing an extra aircraft over their house. So that just needs to be kind of the environment everybody realizes is there as these discussions take place.
I think the new inbound was fine, but Paul, you put the outbound right over my house.
Yeah.
Well, all the inbounds coming over my house, that's all right.
You guys weren't here. It's like, sounds like a good idea. He said, look for two of the biggest houses, one on the way out, one on the way in, and you'll know when you're over the right
That's your
spot.
checkpoint.
Randy has to go through.
Yeah.
Inbound reporting over Randy's house.
Cross on the roof, so you know.
So,
All right, thank you for that. Thanks for the briefing. Yeah, I think it's next week that we're gonna have the out brief.
I believe that,
Monday?
This, I think it's Tuesday.
Is it Tuesday?
I think it's Tuesday.
Okay.
So please join us if you can.
Are we getting any complaints about the JSX jets?
Zero.
I don't want to hex it, but.
If you think about it,
Quieter than.
they're quieter than everything else.
And they get off
You
and they're-
can't, yeah, you can't tell the difference between that and Caprinos or any else's.
Okay.
So no, not a single specific JSX complaint. Nor would I think we would, I mean,
Okay, other questions on the beta test? I guess no more questions. We're moving on.
I have one quick comment or question. Why do you think it is that we can't get the flight schools to buy in, like all in, like seriously on that deal? Because it seems like a lot of that traffic there when I'm up there flying is a lot of the flight school stuff. And it seems like if we could really get them to, kind of look at it like it's not optional, but something that they should really do, or their businesses are at risk, that you think that they'd make more of a concerted effort. It seems like it was a little bit lackadaisical. Any thoughts on that?
I kind of think that if you're not being directed through a real regulation or a real FAA mandate or something that's sort of formal, it's a added task or an added change that adds risk. And I think it could be part of that. Midair also kind of was like, whoa, we're not changing anything. Let's get back to what people are comfortable with. Again, if you remember, Joe, that one flight school was like, nope, we get it 6,000 and we track in from, 10 miles out. So when we hit the class D, we don't have to, worry about descending and talking at the same time. And it's like, really? So I just think there's a sort of, that's an extra step and it's not necessary. And again, I don't want to put it all on the flight schools because I think there were some controllers that were also saying, hey, knock that off. Go, you go back. That's not official. Go back. And without a strong leader over there, ATCs, I don't think gonna ever buy in. And I think as long as they're doing those interim managers, I think that would be a problem we'll have for a long time.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I mean,
Yeah.
50, 60, 70 people
Takes a while.
instructing. It's hard to get these people to change when they're doing it the same. I'm not surprised they're not one.
Well, it's like when a city puts up a new stop sign in an intersection, right, and changes it, and how long it takes to actually for people, and the studies of how many people just drive through intersection because it hasn't been stopped on there, right? So I think it takes a while. But that's, Joe, why I brought up the safety piece too, is that I do think that there is a potential safety element with the flight schools, right, with the volume in it. And if I were a flight instructor, I'd say, yeah, everybody's going this way, this direction, everybody's going that way, that direction. But
It's a process, I think, and it's, they have to get used to it, first of all. The idea that we're gonna do some changes and try some things, and that they're gonna be involved, and then, getting the word out consistently for behavior modification is a whole bigger step, of course, but you keep trying, right? It's two steps forward, one step back, and you try something else.
can I say something?
Again,
Again, with,
go ahead.
because when I was listening to the noise roundtable, one of the things they asked was for the big, the twins to be coming in at 7,200, which is what I'm doing now. And the controller didn't seem real happy that I was coming in at 7. He wanted me more at 65, but it was for the noise. It's what I understood way back, when they were talking about moving things up a little bit.
Did you say you were trying to stay higher for noise abatement?
Yeah,
I think if we announce that on the radio a few more times, that they understand why we're making that request, why we're doing it.
yeah. I mean, and again,
Everybody
that
hears
was
it on
the
the
whole
radio.
idea
Right.
was to, keep it a little bit higher.
Yeah.
But still out of DIA space.
Yeah. Well, keep trying.
Yeah, but they got different speed airplanes, different altitudes. I mean, depends on what's in the area right now, where they want you at.
That's true. Well, they're gonna tell you if it's a safety. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay,
I'm curious.
Sure.
I knew nothing about this. Was just a beta test with the flight schools?
Yeah.
Only good pilots, Stan.
Not old pilot, not the low bus.
So we did it with the flight schools because we thought we could get the most impact.
The volume, yeah.
Like 3 flights a day per plane. I mean, you just do the math.
Yeah.
If we went out to everybody, we thought there was a safety risk, there was just too many people. And again, when it didn't work, we thought, hey, if it's successful, then we'll start promulgating that out. But,
Okay.
yeah, it wasn't anything about special secrets for anybody else. It was just,
Bad pilot.
yeah.
Right. Okay, well, we'll try something that else if we get a good idea. All right. Yes, now we're ready. Well, if you'll indulge me for a sec, just the next topic is a big one, right? We've been chewing on it now for a few months, and I'll just give a quick summary because some were in, some were out from the last meeting, where we had a lot of the detailed conversation with the experts with us. It's a tough situation for the airport, really. And where we find ourselves is that the runway in its current condition, right, as evaluated by CDOT in their annual concrete evaluation of the airports, or maybe it's not annual, but every other year, something like that, puts that runway 321 in half the runways in poor, red, poor condition, meaning it's deteriorating very quickly. There's a couple of green spots and the rest is yellow to orange, meaning it's also in rough shape. You can kind of see even on the picture there, our current methodology is just repairing the cracks as they pop up. It's kind of mitigation type maintenance versus anything else. And at that kind of level of service of the runway, we heard from the experts that the runway will kind of decommission itself inside of 2 years unless something much bigger is done, right? That's just the condition of the concrete. So that's our current condition. We had reviewed, or at least, looked at the 10-year capital plan with Paul and his team. And runway 3 wasn't viewed as a high enough priority to hit the books until 2030. I think the design phase for a full recondition was the year before that, 2029, and 2030 is what we had for actually doing the construction work. Then we heard a lot of details from the experts, right, last month about what that actually meant, and that the money that we had in that capital plan of seven million was a little bit laughable at today's rates, and it would be at least double that to do a full recondition. And then they shared with us that the full recondition would also mean once you close the runway to start working on it, right, you have to bring it up to all current standards, including taxiway Bravo and all the different things that are not currently correct in the environment that we have, and as well as all those protected zones. The road on the other end was coming into question, right? And then they also shared with us that even though our wind patterns qualify us for a cross runway, but just barely, right? Just barely. You need 95% coverage by the main runways at the 10.5 knots and 13 knots. We learned that if you don't have it for both of those categories at 95%, then you qualify for a cross runway. But since we're so close, it was 94.6 or something. We would only qualify for their smallest cross runway assistance, which is not what we have today. It would be significantly shorter and narrower than what we have today. So if you wanted to stick with what we have, again, all that money would have to come from the airport itself versus FAA assisted funding. You guys recall all of that good conversation. Right, so it's a tough nut. And then we talked about the survey, the pilot survey, right? We went out with a community survey, and not surprisingly, right? Pilots like having the runway option. It's not used very often, and that's for a couple of reasons, right? There's the traffic flow, right? Obviously, a lot of the traffic going on the parallels, that's the preferred, especially for the jets. Jets can't use the cross runway anyway. Then there's the wind patterns. Again, they almost always favor 1, 2, or 3, 0, except for 5% of the wind condition, that times that are measured. And then we're only using it 1.5% of the time for operations. And why is that? Because we had ATC tell us, right, they were interviewed as well, that they only actually assign that runway when it's over 30 knots in that correct direction. Well, if it's 30 knots wind out there, I'm not usually flying in. But there are those that are out there, but that's what we heard, right? So it's only on the very heavy wind days that is lined with that runway that ATC is actually routing people to the runway. Right? You guys recall all those comments? Then we also heard from ATC that They don't view it as a critical safety asset because it's used so infrequently for wind conditions. But they say it's a very high value asset as a taxiway, right? They use it a lot to flow traffic in and out. And they would miss that greatly if it wasn't available. That was, Ben, jump in here if I'm missing any key comments from any of the constituent groups. Yeah, so we talked about, complying with all the current regs. If we have to redo it, that's what's driving a lot of the cost up, as well as just the inflationary effect. So what we had was a discussion at the end of this saying, well, all right, that's where we are. So we either have to make one of a few, there's a few basic decisions that the board is being asked to consider or recommend to Paul and the team. And that is, we either disagree with the capital plan as it's currently written, and that this is an important enough asset that we want to rejigger the whole thing and bring it forward to where we're gonna do a refurb, whether the small runway or the refurb of the current size runway, before it's decommissioned, just by deterioration, which would mean in the next 2 years, you'd have to almost swap everything around that's in the current capital plan. We haven't said we're considering that yet, but that's obviously one of the options. Or the second option is, if we're not willing to do that, the other projects that we have identified to go earlier than this are still more important, which includes a reconditioning of 30 Lab. Then it has to stay where it is, and then we have a conundrum, don't we? Then we got into a discussion at the very end of all of that great data. We got into a discussion about a couple of different things. Randy stood up and made an impassioned argument that says any businessman, right? We're trying to run this airport as much like a business as we can. If you have an underutilized asset, which we could easily define this as an underutilized asset, how do we get it to be better utilized, right? What can we do? What are the options? What are the things we might consider that would be there instead of this runway if we didn't have the runway? Because it's not serving as a really high use cross runway. Pilots would argue, hey, the day you need it is the day you need it, even if it's once every 5 years, which is true. This is now my personal opinion on the safety issue, and I have used it once in 10 years, and I was happy to have it that day because it was a really squirrely wind day. But more than a safety issue, I see it as a convenience issue, right? Because even when the wind patterns are north-south, we got Erie, we got northern Colorado, we've got Centennial, all with north-south runways, all within 15 minutes flight time, 5 minutes per year, right? So if you have to get down, we have runways available to us in the near vicinity that can bring you down on a day like that. Inconvenient, yeah, you're not parked at your home airport anymore and you got to Uber home or whatever. Yeah, sure, it is inconvenient. So I've done that a couple of times for snowstorms, actually, not wind, where Metro's getting socked in and I landed Centennial because they were still open. So these things happen, but so I view it as more of an inconvenience rather than a safety matter, because there are runways available to us very nearby. That's my view of it. But
One of the things that was mentioned, how many people would leave if we close it? I found a guy that's using it the most, probably, has a tail dragger over here, I won't mention his name, but he uses it about 3 times a week, and I said, would you leave if we close it? He said, I'd leave now if I could find one in Centennial where he'd like to base his airplane, because there's no room there. So it's easy for him to taxi out and come back. And the other thing on safety, I think in the last 5 years that I can remember, we had one plane that used it because of an emergency, and he ended up crashing anyway because he mismanaged it. He tried to land on 1-1, forgot to shut the throttle off, and ran it off the end of the runway down there.
not a bad day.
So that wasn't really the wind, it was the fact that he just panicked coming in.
Yeah.
Had an
So,
alternator failure and panicked,
yeah,
never pulled his engine back and just went right down the runway at
Yeah.
100 knots.
Bummer. Anyway, but safety is a big issue, so we'll leave that on the table for now. I'm just giving you my opinion on that one, but. And then, but we did talk about the underutilized asset bit and said, okay, well, what would some of the alternatives be if we didn't spend the 15 million to recondition the runway? Right, what would we do with that, some of that space or whatever? So I think that's where we ended up. But I think Paul does have some things on his mind that the space would be utilized for if we didn't have it being used as a runway.
I'll be back in 3 minutes.
And we'll hear about that in 3 minutes. We would obviously need to keep some of that, no matter what we do, right? They'd have to keep it as a taxiway for ATC since they're utilizing it so heavily for that purpose. We'd have to figure out what that means.
I mean, isn't the first step an initial business decision on whether we can even come up with 15, 17, 18 million bucks to do it. And if you can't, you can't. I mean, you could get into an elaborate, and now, you know, if it wasn't such a high cost to keep it, you could evaluate use, benefit use analysis and things like that, and, you know, get down to it. But if we can't even do it, then
Our probability is less than 5%, I think. That's being generous of getting the money to do something. And it also interferes with the current terminal and hangars on the other side and another safety area at the end of 1-1. So those three things would be difficult to get reapproved for a runway there.
Right, that's what, when we say we have to bring it up to current standards, all of
Yeah.
those things would have to be
Yeah,
taken
sure.
into effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I think we heard, pointed where the experts were with last meeting when they were sitting here, they were even saying to us, right, that even if that was our goal, okay, we're gonna pull it forward, we're gonna do it. The FAA might not be very receptive to getting emergency funding or, you know, last minute fund, you know, within the next 2 years, we say we need to do this. They might not give us that priority anyway, to where they would kick their end of the money in.
I also spent some time talking to one of the flight schools and the owner. And if you put a list of priorities, he needs tie downs. He needs tie downs. He needs tie downs for maintenance because people fly in. They can't add to his fleet. We can't add any more flight schools. We can't add any more maintenance facilities because there's nowhere to put airplanes. So those are the other side of the issues that, other than revenue, that people need to do because we can't grow without doing something.
So when Paul returns, I did ask him since we had those kind of open questions, one about, is it a real or a perceived safety issue, not having the runway? That's one, that's still an open question. And then the next one is, what are the alternative uses that he has in mind if we don't have the runway? What, just like Randy's talked about, one of them would probably be aircraft parking, whether hangars, tie downs, whatever. But I'm sure he's got some other thoughts there. I just wanted him to share those with us so that we say, okay, well, what, do you want to share any of that, Ben, or you want to wait
I
for
mean,
that?
I can weigh in on just the part that I've seen.
Sure, go
in
ahead.
the Development discussions is even if you didn't do anything but convert it to a taxiway, there are current impacts to Signature's leasehold in terms of what they can build on the legacy ramp and what's probably discouraged development over there for a number of years already. And then same thing over here. I feel like there's an interesting gray area of whether it's even legal for aircraft to be parked in front of this terminal overnight or even during the day on the ramp, because it's also in what's called the runway visibility zone.
That's all right.
And it feels like right now we're in an arrangement with the FAA, whereas we don't bring it up and they don't.
don't ask them.
Yeah, exactly. But certainly anytime we brought up building in it, the answer is definitely not. And don't even ask because you're already in violation. So even converting it to a taxiway kind of frees up that problem. Let alone, yeah, what else you can do with that, with the land.
I came up here this week to come person for lunch. And I had to go park in the parking lot over here because JSX was, there were so many people parked out front, letting out people to get on the airplane. And that's before we had the other flights. I mean, it's a fabulous success right now. Now, whether it continues or not, you don't know, but I can't imagine what it's gonna look like out here with all this additional traffic. Phoenix got to be a big one for us, or for them.
Yeah, they'll be having 2 planes on the ramp certainly throughout the day, and then, maybe it becomes 3 and it becomes 4, and at some point I think it'll become an issue with the FAA.
Yeah. But it's exciting to see them grow and the revenue that they're buying a little fuel on the facility. So that's adding a lot of revenue. So I'm excited about what the revenue can do for general aviation on the airport, things that need to be done.
Absolutely.
Is this 3 minutes up?
Yeah, it is. You can get them.
Chris, come on.
Well, look, we'll listen to Paul when he gets back, but so with kind of all that background dialogue that I just kind of summarized for us, we worked together to put up a resolution, some text that says the board has considered all these things. We'll hear from Paul now, and then I'll put that up. So we're just talking about what might be the alternate uses of some of that space, Paul.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I smelled something. I don't know if it was Randy or Grayson.
It was Randy.
Yeah, he was clean, Jeff. So I've been talked to by developers, by flight schools. One of the things, we need more tie downs for our flight schools. I've got GA hangar developers that want to come out, mixed, kind of condominium style, you know, kind of bigger, smaller, a mix of them. I have talked to some commercial airliners that would like to come in and have a terminal. So I think ultimately, sorry, I ran down and ran back up. Ultimately, once we kind of head that direction, then what fits best with our strategic business plan and who really comes forward and says, you know, I'm ready to do business. A lot of people come in and talk and they never get anything done. But I would say kind of all aspects of aviation have come at least discussed, you know, because they don't come in and say, hey, I heard you're closing down the 321. They're like, where can we develop on your airport? And we're tied to Sims relocation and taxiway Otis. So we're talking 3-4 years out maybe before we can develop the south side beyond the original 30 acres. So I think sooner than then I say, well, this may be a possibility.
Okay, so anyways, we can put up, well, we put up the text, so kind of just drafted some language that summarizes what we're talking about here. Oh. That looks a lot like the picture of the runway. All right, so, okay, just at the top, yeah. The header is just says, the board has,
The official resolution.
yeah, has discussed these things. It's kind of, there we go. So read these words and see if it accurately summarizes kind of what we're talking about.
I'll scroll down when you're ready.
Okay, ready to scroll down?
Yeah.
We don't come back. So based on that and the discussion we've had, this is the wording we've selected. So the idea would get professional assistance, right? So a consultant help us with the safety analysis, so we can speak instead of just an opinion like I just gave mine, that we actually have some data behind it that says this is what impartial experts would say. And then with that in hand, and what would some of the opportunities be that the airport might pursue if we had a decommissioned runway versus spending the money to recondition? And then with that information in hand, right, we would be a lot smarter about what's the right way to go.
Paul, do these resolutions that us as a body would make, are they anything other than advisory?
No.
They're just advisory.
So the idea would be if this passes or any other future, we've had one other one in the past.
Right.
I would then take it, get on the BCC schedule, Board of County Commissioner schedule, and then just
Get
say, hey,
approval from the
yeah,
commissioners.
not even approval, because again, it's a recommendation. I always kind of give them saying, hey, here's what we're thinking,
Right.
and then they get a chance to interact and ask questions.
Right, okay,
Because again, we haven't made a decision so far,
sure.
because the next decision would be to hire the consultant to kind of do the
Yeah.
safety operational review. At that point, depending on how that comes out, I would then go back to the BCC and say, you know, the advisory board recommended this. The consultant's recommendations are this, the staff thinks we'd like to move forward with this. So we're really talking a year out, at least, you know, I figure 6 months for a study. Hopefully not that long, but that seems to be how long stuff takes.
Right,
And at that point, then we kind of start looking at what's really the opportunity and what's the best way forward.
Right.
Yeah, and I just jumped into that resolution so you could chew on it a little bit, but this last summary slide that Ben put together, these are kind of the three options that we've discussed, right? We can do the first one, which is the full reconstructive effort at the full 15 mil or whatever, then we got to find that money. To your point, John, can we even find that money in the time frame needed before it kind of deteriorates? The second one is more what the consultants were telling us last meeting, is that we will only qualify for the smaller runway in the FAA's eyes, not what we have today, which is the number one. So you're probably really talking about number two. Even if you wanted to go forward, we'd be talking about a smaller project. And then, of course, the third one is kind of where the resolution lines up on us, which is to say, well, if we can't do those just from a practical standpoint of finding the funding and getting the FAA to move fast enough to pitch in their end of the funding, then we're kind of at number three, which is what the resolution discusses, which is if we're on the path of letting the runway decommission itself, so to speak, then what would we do? How big is that safety issue? Let's understand it, and then what would we do with the space?
I think the decommission timetable really depends on the appetite of some people to redevelop. So whether we can get the people, the airlines, or the joint ventures. So that will really determine when we do it.
Is it Javiation? Is that?
Yes.
So would there be two separate studies for them? It seems to me that the safety analysis is one piece. That's really just data and figuring that component out from a technical standpoint, real.
A lot of that's historic too.
I think what's even more important to me is that would we want them to do kind of a sub-plan or a sub-area plan for that area? Here's what you could do. You could do this many GA hangars, you could do a terminal in this many hangars, you could kind of our menu of uses and present like the sub-master plan for that area and what we might look at. You get this much for rent, because that's really the important part to me is where it goes, and then melding that with our master plan and goals of the business, because just maybe it's a JSX takes a priority and we wanted to think about terminal or parking expansion, all those things, but we know where our needs are, and we, you know.
So in my mind, if you go back to our strategic business plan, and there's sort of south side development that kind of laid some options out, some commercial, some corporate, some GA. And again, because it's market driven, right? If they go, we're gonna build 100 hangars, and no one wants to build 100 T hangars. I mean, people do, but I'm just saying, or if I say, no, I really want an MRO there, we're gonna reserve just 20 acres for MRO, and I never get one. So they kind of place some spacage there. And when I talk to them about sort of this type of thing and saying, you guys have the capability to do it, that's, in my mind, that's what I was looking at is, what are my options?
Yeah.
Is it, if it is a terminal, well then, great, I have a terminal, but do I have the parking to support it? And if it's GA, how many hangars and how does that lay out? How do those planes get to the runway and things like that? So I believe they're on that track. I want to be a little bit careful about going too deep on the money, because I pay a bunch of money for a study and then that market doesn't bear out. I think eventually, as we move forward, we'll evaluate the deals that come in and say, hey, this guy wants to build 10, box hangars on this many acres. Okay, well, that's this much rent. I think we evaluate it as the deals come in, but to give me and you all an overview of what could be there was kind of my guiding thing to them, saying, this is kind of what I'm looking at. Very similar to the strategic business plan.
We already know there's an appetite for hangars and stuff on the east side, which is a great place for additional hangars. In fact, we had some people interested. Problem is, we don't have the money to develop the roads and infrastructure to get in there. So this might be a way to get some of that revenue off of we develop here, so we can develop more on the other side. I mean, there's other ways to do it. Go out and ask for a bond issue, go to the county, but we've been reluctant to do that, I think. So, I mean, it'd really be nice if we had a road over there and some fuel and we could have people build the hangars right now.
Right. I mean, that to me is that's all I was thinking right now. Not some detailed plan because what we're going to do. It's more like if you take this area, you could get this many hangars in with having access for the airplanes. or you could get this many, and we could start on a path as developers come down and say, okay, well, we got to put this infrastructure in, get these hangars here, and at least have a direction to start analyzing it, because that's to be where the revenue, you have. The analysis on the runway is operational and safety to me.
Right.
There-
Absolutely.
It's not going to generate any more revenue for the airport, period.
It's doing what it's doing.
As the opportunity for that piece of it is figuring out if we say it's gone, the runway was decommissioned, just wearing my developer hat, I'd be looking at it and say, okay, what I try to do is plan the best I could with what I thought were the highest priority leases that fit with the goals of the airport, so that at least I've thought through it. I've got this kind of laid out, because you're gonna get the guy who comes, well, I want to build 5 hangars. So there might be a threshold to even, what do we need to start to get the base infrastructure over there? And does it make financial sense?
Right.
I think all along, this has been a general aviation airport, and it continues to be a general aviation airport. But this future development has to be a combination of general aviation and commercial in order to generate the revenue we need to grow and do these things.
Yep.
And without that, we'd like to do more for general aviation. All of us would, but it doesn't pay for itself. Okay. We need the other revenues to bring that along.
Right. So that's kind of, you just hit the nail on the head and kind of my point. You know what? If we think that this JSX model is a really good model, no matter what, let's carve out this much to grow a terminal and have parking. And so we'll start talking to developers about this much hangar, and that's what we're gonna do, whether, depending on how long it takes, that's our goal, because we don't want to give up ever this versus kind of first people
Right.
to the table.
First person comes in and says,
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to build 5 hangars right up front, and then
Exactly.
that takes away some
That-
3 or 4
yeah.
other possibilities maybe that are
Yeah.
higher and best used.
So that's why I call it a master plan, of just that sub area of just so you know what to do. And it's almost, because the biggest costs are gonna be up front to decommission runway, tear it up, rate, access, and all that type of stuff. But then it should start falling in nicely, getting ready.
Well, the nice thing is you got JSX. If you look at the model Fort Collins follow, how much did they spend up there to build a terminal?
$7 million. I think.
Yeah, it's on their own, government money. And how long did they have an arrow? Couple months?
30 days,
30,
45 days.
yeah, yeah. So this whole development proposal idea with talking to him is people like JSX, contracts will pay. They'll pay to build these terminals. We're not going to do this and then say, hey, will you stay? Okay? And that's really unique, because we don't want to spend 7 million and have nobody here.
Right. Joe, let me give you the floor, just because it's hard to jump in on the phone if you have a comment.
Thanks, and I've always got something to say, because remember, I'm an attorney. So here's the long and short of it is this, and I don't want you guys to mistake this as anything that I like Randy, but I actually agree with him on the early stuff here. The fact is that the current runway as it exists, while it's kind of like a pacifier to a baby, right? Pilots all want it, but they don't really know why, and they want to hold on to it, and they really don't know why. And I've been flying out of there since 2001, and the fact is it's just not doing anything over there. So from a business perspective, as Randy, you guys started this off and you said Randy had mentioned, from a business perspective, who would keep this? And the answer is nobody. And then the approach here is outstanding. It's safety first, and that's a safety analysis. And then it's not committing to any opportunity, but rather seeing what those are. I'm a little bit, I'd be very cautious about, we have a heavy GA airport. I'm a GA guy, but the fact is here, we have to be very careful about how we frame this, because I just wouldn't make any promises to anybody until I saw the redevelopment opportunities. The reason is that, if you put this out to public vote, there'd be a bunch of GA hangars over there. But for our airport's health, we need, we've always talked about the many legs, the few legs, the tripod essentially that we need to stand on. I think, as Paul has put it in the past. So I would probably be pretty careful about the suggested uses until we saw what the redevelopment opportunities were, because if not, there's only gonna be hard feelings at the end. But all that being said, I completely agree with the approach here. I think the safety analysis is awesome. I think we need to see the opportunities, and I think only then can we make some conclusions. That's my thoughts. I really like this. So again, not say I like Randy, but I agree with him.
Thanks for your support, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
While we were talking, somebody just landed on it.
It's not never.
Question from the airport's philosophy, or at least yours, Paul, is that when we talk about GA not making money for the airport necessarily, do you ever see the airport being in the business of actually building the hangars and renting it themselves?
So I do, and there's a toss-up, right? There's an analysis that has to be done. And for example, I've said it from the beginning, and people panic that I think I'm gonna do this next week or next year. But eventually, we will redevelop the porta ports and T hangars. That is not where they should be. Those should be, FBOs, MROs, big corporate aviation companies right up front. So when Sims gets moved, Otis gets put in, there will be a redevelopment and those will go over there. Again, that's a minimum of 4 years, and that's just to get to the front section. And again, I'm not going to put the T hangars and porta ports at the front section, so we're probably talking a decade. At that point, I will probably be old and tired and just like, I don't care, but. But I think that's an analysis because to be honest, we built the T hangars in the 90s and we make a lot of money on those and they have very little maintenance. So the payback is tremendous. Obviously you need capital to do that. So it's one of those ones where you look at it and go, do I want the headaches? Or do I go to a developer and say, look, you build 50 T hangars. I have one tenant and all the 50 users go to him for the complaints about the leaks and the door fell off the tracks and stuff. So I do think about sort of the long run of, in the long run, it would make more sense for the airport to build some. I think it's fair and a sort of a business philosophy to say, look, there are people out there that can do a good job and there should be a percentage of it. The issue I think would become that if I build 50 and a developer, and I point at you, but any developer builds 50, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be significantly cheaper, which puts you at a disadvantage because now your tenants are like, well, why? And so again, I think we have to look at that and go, how does that all work out? I think there should be a portion that the airport owns because it's a significant income for the airport that just goes on and on and on with very little maintenance.
I'm even thinking that, I'm thinking less the T hangers, because it's right, and that can go where that goes, it's here. I'm thinking more of the medium-sized hangars, let's talk it, to the larger ones that can be very, very profitable. I can tell you, Telluride, that's what we always looked at, and, we're a little geographically constrained up there. But it was very valuable, and it's a little easier for an airport or anybody to raise money or go to a bank and get a loan or do whatever. If it's a physical asset, it's harder to get money, bank to loan you money on runway. There's no income off of it. But when you have a financial model that shows a profitable commercial real estate deal, then I think there's opportunity there for the airport. And I think actually airports should be more in that business instead of do it.
It is very profitable. Go ahead,
Well,
Randy.
we missed really the window in the last 5 years with getting bond money for 2.5%. Right now, it's not a good time to finance to do hangars. Hopefully it'll come back, but we weren't ready for where we want to go with the development to do that. Sure. Too bad, because if that rates were down there now, it'd be an easy decision.
Yeah.
I think in the time, or let's just say fast forward 8 years, and I have this board and I have smart people on it who say, hey, you're thinking too small. We've got the commercial, we've got the corporate, we've got like everything. Why are you worried about the T hangars? Let someone else do that. You go with this, and here's why, and we do the financial analysis. Because again, I'm not a developer. I just kind of know what we have now is a lot of money and it's easy. But if it's easier and more profitable in that analysis, and the board kind of has the people that can sort of convince me of that. Not that I'm hard to convince, I mean, just, but to show me that, look, you're much better off to build 10 of these than 50 of these, and here's why, then I'm absolutely for it.
I think he's talking to Singapore.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just over the-
Questions on the wording of the resolution we just kind of crafted? I think it follows the dialogue, but
Looks good to me. I
okay.
don't have any qualms with it at all.
I'll make.
I think it's excellent. I'd keep it simple, just how it is right now. I think it's really perfect.
Somebody's gotta change something, otherwise Ben's gonna get a big
No,
head.
that's great.
Okay.
You want a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt it.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I carry Jansen's vote, who is in Scotland. He read it, I guess, yesterday and said he was fine with it as well. So, okay, it's unanimous then.
All right.
All right, excellent. Onward then. Any
I
more
would-
public comment? Oh,
I,
go ahead.
I would in the future. I'd like to be aware of this before the meeting. And I just heard that Jansen had seen it yesterday. There's no reason why we could have all not had this 4 days ago. Instead of getting to a meeting and then being asked to vote on something at this caliber.
Okay, yeah, well noted. Okay. Right. That's it for the agenda then.
Any other public comment, or Jay, you got anything?
I was gonna say, if you wanna know how to get all that runway paved for free, just go to Louisville, Lafayette, and Gun Barrel and say, look, either we pave this runway or we get 3 more flight schools.
Yeah.
And pass the hat.
Sounds like blackmail.
Make sales over the weekend to raise the money.
The problem is you improve that runway and everybody's gonna be taking off right over their cities.
Well, don't tell them that.
All right, we'll call it adjourned on that comment.
Next month's meeting. Next
Oh,
month.
right.
I'd call it adjourned before the comment.
Yeah.
Wait, before you adjourn, I gotta show you guys I'm having more fun than you are. One more.
All right.
Nice.
That's terrific.
How about the 16th of November? That's the third Wednesday, right?
God, are we up to November already?
I guess the 9th will be the second.
Hope we
I can
didn't
do the
interrupt
weekend
your
now, but-
fishing.
It's up to you guys.
Anybody ever?
Fishing's good, guys. Fishing's good.
What day is this? Oh, November.
Yep.
I can't keep track of it. So
We decide, is it the 16th, the next one?
Seeing if anybody has a preference, Joey, 9th or the 16th? Indifferent?
I'd like the 16th. I'd like the 16th if possible. On the 9th, I'm in Costa Rica or Hawaii, I think. Hawaii.
That's as good a reason as any. 16th it is. All right. Okay, thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Good job, buddy. Yeah.